Hey there, bookworms! I've recently reread The Bone Season by Samantha Shannon so that I can right afterwards read the sequel, The Mime Order, and I just finished it and I decided to do this kind of combined review of them both in a way that on one hand will be informative but on the other hand will not have any spoilers in it. So what I thought I will do is the following. I will begin by generally talking about them in a way that won't reveal too much. If you haven't read any of them, or obviously if you only read the first one, and then afterwards I will announce that I'm going a little deeper and you guys can decide whether you want to continue watching or just switch off. I will not have any actual spoilers, but if you haven't read the first one and I'll be talking about the second one, I will mention things and names of characters and so forth that might spoil a little bit for you. So it's up to you and you get to choose whether you want to continue watching or not. So what I like about both books in terms of cover is that if you look on the back, you can't really see exactly what the plot is about, just generally. So in that tradition, I will only tell you that this is a dystopian future series. Now I do have to say I'm not too crazy about the modern take on this genre. I have a lot of respect for the classics, for books like 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. But I do find that the modern version of these books are not very special, they're not very inventive, they kind of miss the whole point of the dystopian future genre, and they're also written in an extremely teenagery sort of way in language. I hope I'm not insulting any of you teenagers out there, it's just the way that it's written. I'm excluding the Hunger Games trilogy, which I actually really liked. It was very impressive. The first one was good, at least. But going back to The Bone Season, it's yet another dystopian future, but this one is actually written very well. It's very mature. And also, despite the protagonist being a 19-year-old girl, she did grow up in circumstances which forced her to grow up a lot faster. Something that I found very interesting in this series is that it's actually fantasy in a science fiction setting. I thought it was very interesting because the whole theme of future, whether it's a good future, bad future, usually belongs to the sci-fi genre. But this time, in this series, we have clairvoyance. We're in the future, the year I think is 2059 if I'm not mistaken, and many people are being born with extrasensory perception. That is clairvoyant in case you don't know the term. Some can read auras, some can tell you the future using different objects like dice or cards, some can communicate with the spirits, etc. And although they are born like that, they are still considered enemies of the state and are being jailed and executed at once if they are found, even if they didn't commit any actual crime. And that is, of course, the evil government that is presented in in the world of this series. We follow Paige Mahoney, the protagonist, who is a very rare and powerful kind of clairvoyant, and she belongs to one of the many crime syndicates in London. Now, I won't tell you too much of the plot, and what I just told you, all this background is, believe me, it's the tip of the iceberg. It doesn't even begin to explain the plot. So if you haven't read any of the books and you're wondering whether you should, because you know the first one can be good but the second one can be really bad, let me just tell you, they're both fantastic. The first one is amazing, the second one is very good. Look, honestly, if I have to choose, the first one is better. The first one is always better. But I also don't think it's very fair to judge them like that as separate books and say this one is better, this one is not so good or something, because they are both part of a bigger story. They are the first and the second chapters, if you will, of a bigger picture. So just don't worry, they're both amazing. Read them, go read The Bone Season, and it will probably take you about 2 days because it's a page turner. It has a very, very fast pace, and I actually read both of them very, very quickly. Okay guys, so now I'm going to go a little deeper, talk a little bit more about the second book. If you haven't read the first one, it's up to you. I'm not going to spoil anything. I'm not going to tell you how the first book ends, but just be warned that I will be mentioning a few things that perhaps are not spoilers per se, but they might reveal certain elements. I mostly be mentioning characters' names and places, and perhaps they won't say anything to you. So it's up to you. You are warned. Okay, so the second book, The Mime Order, begins exactly where the first one ends, and it takes a completely different direction. Paige goes back to London and the Mime Order sets there in London. Now, it's not a bad thing. It makes a lot of sense plot-wise that that's what happens, and at the beginning I thought I will be disappointed if the book goes to a different direction, but I wasn't. We also go a little deeper. We get to be with the Seven Seals, we learn a little more about them, especially Eliza and Jax. We also learn about the Rephaim, about their past, about their plans. The first book left many questions unanswered, and in the second one we get answers to some. Now I wanted to talk about two different things, which is the story itself and the way that it's written, but it was a little difficult to actually separate the two, so I'll do my best. The story overall, I mean the big picture of the entire series, is constructed very well. It's kind of like it's divided into chapters. The first book, the Bone Season, it's like chapter 1, let's call it the Sheol 1 chapter. The second book, The Mime Order, takes a completely different turn. It's like a different chapter in the story. And from the way it ends, it tells me that there will be another very big change, and the third book will take another direction, will be like a third chapter. But the first book, in my opinion, has a much clearer and better structure. We start with Paige's life, we have this intro, we see what's going on, then she gets captured, which sets things in motion, and pretty soon she realizes that she has a goal to escape, and that's the plan. And we follow her with the plan, and things get more serious and more complex until the book ends, when the plan is being done, whether they succeed or not, and that's where they end, and that's the first of the first chapter. Also in the first book we have lots of flashbacks in order to tell of Cyan and Paige's past, in order to get some background, and I really like the way the flashbacks are being done and explained also. That was really impressive and I really liked it. The second book, however, its structure seems a little messy. We do have a coherent plot. Paige once again finds herself facing some sort of mission. The book follows her while she tries to get there and achieve her goal, and the book ends at the end of this mission, whether it's successful or not. Obviously, I'm not going to tell you. I'm not quite sure myself. But something in the way that it was written, it seems like the narrative and the way it's going was not completely going in a straight line that makes perfect sense. It's not like I couldn't follow the story, but especially comparing with the first one, very clear narrative. I think this one, the second one, was a little, I don't know, rushed or something. But at the end, everything is being solved, there is a conclusion, and I know I'm going to annoy so much of you by saying that, but the ending was awesome. But going back, I think it should have been edited perhaps a little more. Also, I found like one instance where you had a quotation mark that didn't close at the end of the sentence, and another sentence where you had a word missing. It took me a while to realize what's going on there. Speaking of writing, I think that the first book's amazingly fast-paced was due not only to the physical action in it, but also to the lack of unnecessary descriptions. Both people and places are being described only with few words. But you all remember that Ivy has blue hair, right? But I think that a little more description would have done the second book in particularly some good. I can't tell you how many times I've read about a character and only a while later I realized that it was actually a woman and not a man. And also there are many times where someone, for example, was hit, but she never mentions what, from what and where. And I mean, there's a difference if someone is being shot, for example, if they were shot in the arm, something that can heal very quickly, or in the abdomen where you pretty much bleed to death. There's a different and a little more description could make things a lot clearer, but because this confusion happened to me so many times, I did think it was a good thing to mention it. But both books manage, because of this very fast page, because they're so much of a page turner, not to be boring for 1 second, even in places where you have absolutely zero physical action, when it's just a conversation, people are talking, it's still very interesting. You want to keep on reading, you want more information. So basically, I did like the second book, even though parts of it seemed like fillers, you know, as if the second book was just one big intro to the third one. It was still good, it was still worth the reading, and I especially liked the peek that we get into the Mime life, the gangs, the syndicate. Now I only have to wait for the third one to come out, whenever that will be. But guys, if you like this video, click to show it. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you dare, and I will see you guys in the next video.